This episode of Imagineer Podcast is sponsored by WDW Magazine. If you're missing Walt Disney World right now like I am, it's hard to believe I haven't even been to the parks in over 6 months, WDW Magazine will definitely hit the spot. They are the premier magazine focused on Walt Disney World, available in print or digital. The digital edition gives you instant access to over 80 issues of WDW Magazine, each one containing over 100 pages plus embedded video content. And the print edition contains over 64 glossy pages of pure content mailed right to your mailbox every month with no interior ads. The quality of this magazine, both in terms of visual appeal and written content, is the best in the business and will leave you with hours of magical entertainment. If you can't tell already, I personally subscribe to both the digital and print editions, and I am in love with their work. In fact, I was just personally reading a 10-page article all about the Society of Adventurers and Explorers, which was in their August issue, and I learned so much, including the fact that there's an Easter egg to the Society in the United Kingdom Pavilion at Epcot. I had no idea. Best of all, WDW Magazine is giving Imagineer Podcast listeners 10% off a new annual subscription to their digital edition, which I learned will stay with you if you decide to auto-renew. To enroll today and get instant access to over 80 digital issues, simply visit www-magazine.com/Imagineer Podcast. And by the way, that's a hyphen between the words WDW and magazine, and use the promo code Imagineer. Even simpler, just look for the hyperlink in the description of this podcast episode, which will take you right to the sign-up page. Again, type into your browser www-magazine.com/Imagineer Podcast and use code Imagineer to take 10% off an annual digital subscription. Hello and welcome to the Imagineer Podcast, your unofficial guide to all things Disney. I'm your host, Matthew Krull, and you're listening to episode 86 of the Imagineer Podcast. In today's episode, I have the pleasure of interviewing former Walt Disney Imagineer George Wilkins. For those of you who don't know George by name, you almost certainly know his work. He composed and wrote music for so many classic Disney attractions and area music loops. He wrote themes to things like The Living Seas, Horizons, probably one of my favorite extinct attractions of all time, wrote the music for Sonny Eclipse, working alongside Imagineers like Marty Sklar, and so much more. We talk a lot about his history at Walt Disney Imagineering, some of the work he did prior to joining the Walt Disney Company, and some of the work that he's done since leaving the company. It was a really fun discussion, and I was so honored to have the chance to chat with him on an episode of this show. Of course, at the end of the episode, I'll come back and tell you a little bit more about how you can connect with the Imagineer Podcast on all your favorite social media channels, and how you can help to inspire and create the future of this show. So, grab some headphones, pull up your favorite armchair, and enjoy this episode of the Imagineer Podcast. So as I've definitely spoken about on the podcast before, I am enamored with the music at the Disney parks. I feel like it totally transports us, helps transport us to entirely different worlds. And so I am thrilled and honored to have the privilege to be able to chat with George Wilkins on the show today, who many of you might know his name. If you don't, you certainly know his work, and we're going to be chatting all about it. So welcome to the show, George. How are you?
Feeling good.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. I hope your summer's going somewhat well so far.
It is. I kind of feel like a shut-in at times, but other than that, where I live, they've really opened up the town, so it's not bad at all. With a lot of outdoor restaurants, and so we're not too trapped.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it's a different world these days, but as long as everybody's safe and healthy, that's what's matter the most. So I'm really, again, thrilled to have you on the show. For as long as I've been alive, for the most part, I've been going to Disney parks, and I've been at least aware of your work. It was only when I got older that I put the name to the work. But I grew up with, like Horizons, for example, is one of my favorite attractions from when I was a kid, and still to this day have fond memories of the attraction, which we'll get to. I feel like we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but before we get into your career at Wet Enterprises, Walt Disney Imagineering, I want to learn a little bit more about what first even interested you in pursuing a career in music.
Yes. Well, let's see. When I was a kid, when I was in grade school, I sang. Well, probably when I was around 7 years old or 8 years old, I sang "God Bless America" in the hallway of our grade school. And the guy came up to me and asked if I would like to join the St. Paul's Cathedral Boys Choir downtown Detroit. And I did. And that guy was Tom Skerritt, by the way, who's a pretty well-known actor.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I joined the choir. I ended up becoming the boy soloist for about 2 years. And from there, when my voice changed, I went into other choirs and ended up at WJR in Detroit called Make Way for Youth. And in that group, I put together a vocal group called the Spellbinders. And we did a 5-day-a-week radio show. And from there, that group, we went to New York and started working in New York and became the Page Five, which was Patty Page's vocal group. And we did 1 million television shows with her. And from there, I went over and we took over the Como show for a summer, and I became a choral director and the arranger for the show. And that's really, talk about the beginning of my career. That was it. Actually, from there, I got drafted in 1956 and went into the U.S. Army Band in Washington, D.C. And that's where I really started becoming an arranger, was with that. And I got out of that and went to New York and got into the jingle business and wrote jingles up until 1964 until I moved to California.
Any jingles we would remember?
Yeah, probably. if I could remember them. When it's HOSTESS, the little bake shop.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think that was one of the more popular ones.
That's awesome.
We did TWA, but New York, of course, was all national jingles. So I was in New York until 1964 doing jingles. And I also worked with Rankin Bass Productions. And we did the original Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which is still plays every Christmas. And I did a couple of movies with them. One, I just wrote the songs, and the next one I did the score. And then I met Henry Mancini and moved to California and did an album with him and stayed in California.
Yeah, that's certainly a lot of places too, going from Detroit, over to eventually New York, and then California, sort of the middle East Coast and West Coast of the U.S. And
that was. We used to do in the jingle company I belonged with. We used to produce the Firestone Christmas albums, and I was a creative director on, I think, 3 or 4 of them. And we used Julie Andrews and the Young Americans and Vic Damone and some, Hollywood people on this last one that I did. And I came out here with Irwin Costo and did all the vocal arranging and, picked material and produced the album out in California. And that's when I met Mancini and a bunch of different people. And I suggested an album idea to Hank. And I ended up recording an album called Brothers Go to Mothers and Others with a vocal group called Group One. And that really was the start of my career in California.
Yeah. So, I mean, and definitely some big names you mentioned there, not only Julie Andrews and Henry Mancini, but even Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and a lot of popular names that a lot of people today would even recognize.
I still get residuals for that.
Wow.
And I did Peter Pan with the old Syl Richard and who was the star of that? Anyway, I still get residuals for that. I have on my wall hanging a check for 38 cents that was sent to me from AFTRA for that.
Wow.
And I must have done that in 1954 or something like that. So
that's
I'm one of the
funny.
older guys.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of it as one of the originals. It's definitely a better way to put it. I say the same thing about the first generation Imagineers. They're not the older Imagineers; they're the originals, the first generation of Imagineering. So speaking of which, how did the gig with Walt Disney Imagineering, or WED Enterprises, I should say, when did that first? How did that come about?
I got a call from Buddy Baker, who I had never met. And he called me up to do some vocal arranging for the Land Pavilion. And I had been recommended by somebody. And so I put together a group and did the recording and everything. And later on, he called me and wanted to know if I wanted to come over and join him as an associate at Disney, which I initially said no to, which I was... a friend of mine said, "What are you, crazy?" So anyway, I called him back. But what had happened is that Buddy, who was one of Walt's good friends and one of the originals, and Buddy had been in a car accident and was laying in the hospital, and Bill Miller, who was then president of Disney, went to visit him and said, "And by the way, Buddy, does anybody know what you know?" And Buddy said, "I doubt it." And Bill Miller said, "Well, get someone." Because Buddy had done all the music for Disneyland, for the theme parks. So he knew where all the bodies were buried and where all the tracks were. And so I kind of became responsible for checking out the parks and making sure all the tracks were working in their different locations. And that's where I started. And then he took off to do The Fox and the Hounds in England. And all of a sudden, I was head of the music department. And we had just started Epcot, and we had just started the Tokyo Disneyland. And I ended up doing a score for one of the opening parts of the Tokyo Disneyland. I did a film, and by the time he got back, and then they ended up throwing that score out, and he had to go back to England and redo it. So I had about 4 or 5 months before he and I ever started working together, really. So anyway, that's how I became ensconced at Disney.
Well, that's great, and I'm glad your friends helped you to decide to go to accept the job offer at Disney. Because
he said, "George," he said, "just think you could do the next Bambi." I said, "Yeah, man, count me in."
It's true. We wouldn't have had the music we have today without the decision to do it. So, as a fan, I appreciate that for sure. Buddy Baker is obviously another name that a lot of Disney fans know, especially those who know the music of the parks and the movies. And I imagine that coming from the background that you had, jumping into a role of essentially designing and creating music for a park environment. And I spoke about this a little bit with Russell Brower as well, that there are, I feel like, some differences to building a park, ambient park music, or a song particularly for an attraction compared to a jingle or a song you would hear on the radio. Do you remember sort of what that initial experience was like? Did you feel like there was a lot of learning curve?
One of the first writing projects I did was with the Sherman Brothers, and I did the first Imagination Pavilion with them. Well, I say with them. They wrote a song, and they disappeared, and I did the ride, which was about, I don't know, 30 minutes of music or something.
Right.
And I did their song inside out, outside in, backwards, forwards, upside down. And the thing that I realized along the way was that in many cases I was writing music that had to go 8 feet per second. So if you were in the vehicle you're in passes a set at X amount of speed. So whatever you write, you kind of have to tell that story within that space of time. And again, you're dealing with time, so that's not so much different than movies or anything else. But I had in that particular show, I had a particular problem in that when you entered the imagination, when you first entered the ride area, there was music playing in the exit area, which was just 10 feet over a wall on the other side. So whatever I wrote for the entrance, I had to not write the same thing, but I had to write something that would work with the opening, chord-wise and tempo-wise, so it wouldn't mash. And so that was Buddy helped me on that. That was tricky, but I had a lot of fun. I did a lot of experimenting on that particular ride. That was a great ride. And I did the first one, and somewhere along the line after I left, they changed the ride, and evidently there was a kind of an uproar about what happened to some of those characters. And I got pulled back in and did a new one, which I doubt. They've probably changed it again by now, but I did, out of the first 3, I did 2 of them. So
you did the best too. I'll agree. And believe it or not, the third one is still around, that third version.
Really?
But it is. I remember the first version. I remember the second version. I obviously remember the third version. It's the most recent. But the second one is the one that obviously it was around for the shortest period of time, which is part of the reason, but also the changes they made to the second one. Yeah, there was definitely an uproar with the original changes, but the first and the third, you can tell that it was, I mean, if it wasn't written by the same person, it was certainly someone who took full inspiration from the original version. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, down the road from, or not even down the road, right across the park from Imagination. Imagination is one of the attractions I remember most growing up, but I think a lot of people, myself included, have very fond memories of Horizons, which was not necessarily an opening day attraction. It opened a year after Epcot opened, but was there for almost about 16 years of the park's history. It's amazing. It's been gone longer than that.
I think it was 2 years after.
Yeah, you're right. It was a little bit farther off. Sometimes I get my dates confused. But do you recall working on Horizons?
Very much. Oh, yeah.
What was that experience like?
Well, it was my favorite project. That's an interesting story if you want to hear it.
I'd love to hear it. Absolutely.
Well, I was working at that point in time when I first. What happened was I got a call from Randy Bright to take the song that the Sherman Brothers had written, which I can't remember the name of right now, and do a big recording on it. So I used a big orchestra, and I brought in a friend of mine, Michelle Bell, who had just done Old Man River on Broadway, and brought him in, and we did a big recording and brought it into this meeting, and all the people from General Electric were there, and Disney, and so we played it, and everybody thought it was wonderful and loved it, except Randy said, I don't like that song. And everybody said, what do you mean you don't like that? We've been using that for like 3 years, and da-da-da. He says, it's too Disney. He says, it's too much like Disney, like Disneyland and Donald Duck and all that. And he said, George, he said, why don't you try and write something over the weekend? And so I wrote the Horizons theme over the weekend, came in and played it for the exact same group of people. And they bought it, and off we went. The problem was that I was working with the Sherman Brothers right at that time on another show. I think it was Kodak. I think I was working with them on. And then I had to tell them that I just bounced them off the Horizon show. They took it. I mean, they had about 8 of the shows, so they didn't really care. But that was a wonderful experience, and I got to do all of it. I used John Debney here and there on some things, and used Richard Bellis on the ending of the ride, where it goes. You can take your choice, how you want to come home, underwater, over, whatever. But the rest of it, I did and orchestrated, and it was a lot of fun. I think there's some beautiful music in that. There's just some great. I still get. There was a scene where you're going actually through space, and you come up to this robot not robot.
I think it's a space station, right?
It's a space station.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm having trouble here. Space station in space. But going up there and seeing that thing just floating in the sky, man, and that music that was playing, I mean, I got my hair stood on end every time I got there. It was wild.
My hairs are standing on end just thinking about it now.
Yeah. One of the great, it was really pretty.
Yeah, I love the score. I think that's part of what the appeal for the attraction was. It's a lot of things. It's the message. It's the ride system, the overall tone and optimism. There's a lot that's in that attraction that makes it so memorable. But the music is certainly one thing. And I'm very impressed that you wrote that. Really an iconic, memorable song over the weekend.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because we had an upright piano, so that sat up against the wall, right? And then there was a long conference table in the middle of the room. So I had to sit at this piano and play, which I'm not a great piano player, and sing the song. And I'm facing the wall. Of course, everyone's behind me, and in back of me. And I kept trying to play and turn around and look at them and sing. Yeah, it was just, it was really funny. And one of the guys from General Electric, Dave Fink, said to me after, he said, "Nice dog and pony show." And unbeknownst to me, he was a tuba player and had played on Broadway for years. So I thought I was talking to a bunch of, accountants, and he was a Juilliard major. So anyway, he and I became good friends out over that project. Good guy.
Yeah, that's terrific.
He ended up actually becoming research and development for Disney. He left General Electric after that and came to Disney Imagineering.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You brought up a point earlier, and there's a few ways we could go with this, but you talk about riding Horizons and hearing the music, do you remember the, I guess, first time you heard your music in the parks? Was it Horizons, or was there something else that preceded that?
You mean that I had ridden on and heard?
Yeah, something that you personally wrote, I should say, and then got to experience in a Disney park with other guests around you.
Yeah. I just can't think of all of them.
Oh, I know. It's probably it's got to be a ton.
Yeah, I did the whole opening when you walk through the opening, the whole medley of all the different themes, and I used a bunch of different arrangers for all the different themes, and I had done American Adventure, that America, that one.
Love that song.
And the first time I went to Epcot, and it was just dusk, and I walked in and they were playing that. Choked me up. Then I did a lot of things that nobody knows about. Like I did shows like Backstage Magic, and which was about their computer system, and I did another one that was a question where people had to push buttons, and you probably know what that is. I wrote it in 5/4, which was Buddy Baker thought was not a fan of mine on that. I had done a thing, was the main theme, and everybody went, "Whoa, it's very, yeah." Doesn't sound like the Sherman Brothers, So, by the way, the Sherman Brothers are dear, dear people. I loved them. They loved me. I loved them. I was their private orchestrator for seemed like years. I did a lot of their stuff.
I'm glad you actually brought that up, because that was the other question I was going to ask, was what it was like to work with them. And I know that they had done so much with Walt, and they have obviously songs that have also stood the test of time, going back to
I did. Ago. So I'm looking behind me here. I did Pooh's Honey Hunt with them for Japan. I did Imagination Pavilion. I did the Kodak Pavilion. I did all the demo work on Magic Journeys, and one other, I can't think of what it is. And Dick, he only plays in the Black Keys. Everything he wrote was on the Black Keys, so it was always in G flat or D flat or something. Always weird. I changed everything, and we got along great, because I took many liberties with their stuff, especially like I said in the Imagination Pavilion. I wrote against their song. I wrote when you get into where he's playing the organ. I can't, if it's Dreamfinder.
Yes,
someone's playing this big, massive organ, and I wrote a whole counter piece to that in a minor key against their song. Then we did a whole, there was a slow motion piece of a water drop. That was, I think, can't remember what that was, within that ride. And that was their favorite part of the whole score, and they hadn't written it. So anyway, I just thought they were a great guy. I feel so lucky to have worked with them. And I'm so sorry Bob had to die, when he did. But
well, we could go down the list of every single one of the things you've worked on, which I know would take a long time because you've worked on so much. But another piece that stands out to me, just because of it being a little different than some of the other work at Disney, is working on Kitchen Cabaret. Because there you're taking, and I know that evolved into Food Rocks, which became more parody of existing tunes. Buddy Baker and Existencio wrote those songs,
and I just came in and did the vocal arranging, and then I produced the vocals, and Scott Hennessy, I think, did the lyrics, and then I also did the next show that went down there, that was Food Rocks, which was another show. I don't know if you remember that.
I do. I remember that show pretty well.
Huh?
I remember that show pretty well, actually.
Yeah, but yeah, I had that's one of the first things, and then I wrote. I had to write the. It was funny. I had to do an hour's worth of Dixieland in front of that kitchen cabaret show, which area music out in front.
That's right.
Why it was Disney Dixie, I don't know. Honestly, God, don't know. I've thought about that more than once. But I did all these arrangements, did them all. It took me like 2 or 3 weeks to write an hour's worth of that stuff. And I got, all my guys came from it's Lawrence Welk. And in his band, he had the Bob Crosby Bobcats. Most of the players that had been in the Bob Crosby Bobcat, and they were Dixie players. That was a Dixieland band. So they came into the studio, right? We all met. I'd never met any of them before, and we pulled out the first arrangement and we played it. And they said, we used to do this all the time. You want to hear our version? I said, yeah. Bang, off we went. we ended up taking everything I wrote and threw it out the door. And they did the whole hour. I think we did the whole hour in about 2 hours. And so they were
amazing.
Great. Yeah, that was fun. I learned a lot that day real quick.
Well, another piece that, or another attraction, I suppose, is that I remember and is still around as well. Some of the things we're talking about eventually did get replaced. Some are still around. But one of the things that has been around for quite a while now is over at the Cosmic Ray Starlight Cafe. You can enjoy the sounds of Sonny Eclipse.
Sonny Eclipse.
I have to say, like, my family and I, whenever we went to Magic Kingdom when I was younger, we would always go to Cosmic Rays, and I think because of Sonny Eclipse, the food was almost the same you could have gotten at other locations at the park. But yeah. Sonny made that special, and the songs are they're hilarious. Like they're so much fun to listen to. Do you remember what it was like composing for Sonny?
Oh, that was fun. I worked with one of my favorite people.
I can actually
Kevin Rafferty and I wrote that show. And how that started, I think Marty Sklar, it was his idea, is to take a bunch of songs, How High the Moon, and change the lyrics and do How Low the Earth, and juxta around standard songs and do the same thing that a guy who comes from outer space as a lounge singer and do the show. And so he presented it to us and to Kevin and I. And then they started looking up what it was going to cost publishing-wise. At that point, they said, hell, let's just write one. So he and I wrote that. And that was a lot of fun because I have all the songs right here in front of me. There's a couple of songs, Gravity and Out in Space. Do you know the show? You obviously.
I know the show. I'm not sure I could recite all the lyrics, but I do have the song list in front of me. So is one that I remember very well. Bright Little Star, I think, is Space Angels.
Soup and Salad.
Yeah.
Bright Little Star, which is a good little tune, by the way.
It is. That was on the official album for a while.
It was?
Yeah, on the Walt Disney World official album, it played, I think it was a CD that had maybe 12, 15 songs on it, and that was one of them.
Yeah, and then Out of Space was kind of a bossa thing.
Yes.
So we had a ball doing that, and I did that all in my studio. And so that's all MIDI, except for some of the keyboard stuff. And Cal David is the singer. And I had known Cal for years. Great singer. And I said, "You want to be a lounge singer from outer space?" He said, "Yeah, man." So off we went.
And I love
Sonny Eclipse, in case you don't know, Sonny Eclipse was a character in Tokyo Disneyland, and he had a pizza parlor. He made pizzas, and at that park. I've seen it's one of those long machines, where the dough plops in here and it comes up there and it goes through this tube, and probably about 30 feet long, and he operates it, and that's where that character came from. And I guess they did that because they could just take that character and redress it and make it, and then build that organ, build the, I can't think of what that.
He's got like a space organ of some kind.
Yeah,
I think it's called.
We had a name for it, but funny, I just had an interview with somebody else who had, there used to be a guy that had that kind of an instrument.
Oh, wow.
And it was MIDI. I can't have Richard. Anyway, he goes, "Hey, it's raining cats and dogs," and all of a sudden he'd hit a note and hear barking and meowing and everything. So he's like one of the first guys that had kind of that MIDI thing, psyched out. And so when we went to do Sonny Eclipse, that was the idea, to use something like that he could be anything. So he plays his own applause and cheering, and that's all on that organ.
That's right. That's a brilliant idea too.
Yeah.
And you're right about the. I think I had seen it at some point and totally forgot that he came from the animatronic, or the character came from Tokyo Disney.
Yeah.
But
it was a show that I did there. That's another show I did, but it seemed like it was Italian. Yeah, it was Italian.
So I'm again, like there's a lot that you've worked on, and are there any in particular that besides the ones that we've gone through that stand out as something you remember, or was a, I know you said Horizons was your favorite. Were there any that stand out as ones you really enjoyed working on?
There's a thing that was in the energy. Was it the Energy Pavilion, or was it where we had moving sounds? So when you were in the waiting line, entrance line, a train would come through and from left to right. And I did all that arranging and vocal arranging. I wish I could remember the tune now, but that was fun. That was all, sound effects. And then I did all kinds of different groups. I did the high-lows and the skylarks and men's quartets and women's sextets, and so that was a fun project. That was an hour's worth of stuff too. I think what was the other pavilion that I'm traveling pavilion?
There was that would have been the World of Motion.
World of Motion. That was it. Yes, that was the cue line music. And when you say I did a lot of things, I would jump in and do a cue here and a cue there. I think I'm in every pavilion some way or another. The Seas Pavilion, I did. That's what Russell did all the area music for that.
That's right. He mentioned
with the whales.
He mentioned to me the fact that was his first project. Was you had written the main theme of it, and then he extended it into an hour-long loop.
Yeah, I worked with Russell in two different places.
That in Tokyo, probably.
Well, no, I did all the Teddy Ruxpin music.
Oh, that's right.
And Russell did all the sound effects on that. And I think it was after that he went back to Disney and became a music guy. I ended up doing 2 or 3 things for him. I ended up going to England for him and did all the area music for an Italian space in Japan. Other fun shows where I did all the Country Bear stuff. And we wrote a lot of, new stuff for that. Doing the Country Bear Jamboree was a real eye-opener because you write a tune, and you're going ba 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 da chicka chicka jang chicka chicka da yakka chicka, and the characters are going they're moving, they're in slow motion, and you got a tempo you chuck going on, and that always blew my mind. The tempo's going 90 miles an hour, and they're going 10 miles an hour. Funny. I'm looking up my wall here. Do you know Exitencio? Or do you know his name?
I definitely know his name. I mean, he had written the lyrics to Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, well, he was the only one for many, many years that Walt allowed to draw Mickey. He was an artist. And he did 3 of me, and I have them on my wall. I'm so proud that I had to have those. I did a concert in '84, and there's a picture of me sitting at the piano, playing the piano, but real comical. And he's a great guy. Wonderful man. That was when joining Disney. There were so many talented people. I mean, to think that I had John Debney as my assistant is pretty wild.
It's true.
Yeah, really. And I remember the day he came in and said he was leaving because they didn't exactly fire him, but they kind of fired him. And I said, John, this is going to be the best thing for your career ever, is getting out of here. And the next thing I know, he won the Academy Award, so not bad.
Not bad at all.
He was a great orchestrator. And I mean, he helped me do the center of the Horizon Pavilion, all the rockets taking off and the flyover of New York and everything. He was wonderful.
Definitely a great composer.
Yeah, well, he's one of the guys. I would say he and Williams and Horner died, but certainly they're the heavysweights now.
They sure are.
Yeah, and Buddy never gave him a chance. His dad, John's father, had worked for Disney and was a good friend of Walt's and everything, and that's why John hung around Disney his whole life, And I don't think Buddy didn't particularly like that, how he had gotten there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's I mean, there's definitely a lot of obviously very talented people that work there, and it's great you get to work with so many that's a lot of Disney fans even know. I guess after all the work that you had did, what was it like to leave Imagineering?
Well, it was weird because I was actually staff composer for Disney Pictures, and I got borrowed by Imagineering. Basically, is how it worked. So my officers were over at the studio, which I never went in because I was always over at Imagineering.
Right.
And so at some point, I left I started in '79, and I gave them notice in '85, and I started working on Teddy Ruxpin. And kind of like in the middle of that, I got called back to Disney to do a freelance thing. And I ended up being back at Disney more than I had when I was working there as a freelance. And so I didn't need an office, and I had my own studio, and I did a lot of the work out of my own studio, and a lot of work I recorded on Stage A at Disney. That was the big thing coming, from where I had come from, which was I used to produce Vegas shows and work in that capacity with orchestras, and they were usually like 20-piece orchestras at the most. And all of a sudden, I'm standing in front of a 60-piece orchestra, or as many as I wanted. One of the first things I did, I worked on a big show. Can't think. I'll think of it in the middle. And had a big orchestra, probably 53 or 54 guys, and they decided to use Imagineering's digital machines, and brought those digital machines over to the studio, which on the lot on Stage A. Well, that's a union. Stage A is union. Imagineering's non-union. So they wouldn't let the guy who knew how to run the machines touch the machines while the guys at Disney tried to figure out. I walked in and they had a fan with dry ice blowing through under these two machines, trying to get them to work.
Wow.
And I had 52 guys running around on the outside, and so I bring them in every 15 minutes or so, and we rehearse all the cues, and then they'd go running around again. And I'll never forget. And I had just finished the movie of the week. Then my whole budget for that movie of the week might have been $30,000 for orchestra, writing, copying, studio, everything, right? And this one session was costing like $37,000.
Wow.
And I remember my boss sticking his head in the door because I couldn't operate these machines. And the guy who knew how to operate them was sitting 20 feet away, and they wouldn't talk to him. And so I remember my boss sticking his head in the door to all of us. He said, "Who can make it tomorrow?" I thought, that's the funniest line I ever heard. Trying to get 52 of the major players in town to, back into the same room tomorrow was, So that was my opening date at Disney. And I still can't remember what it was for, but it was a big one. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot. Not many people get that opportunity to just be able to name out any kind of an orchestra they want, which was the case because, but Disney used to have their own orchestra. These guys were there 8 hours a day, if you used them or not. And so when I got there, I didn't know anything about that. And the first thing I talked to Buddy about what kind of an orchestra. He said, don't. He says, just write something and we'll figure that out later. Meantime, we booked we booked 25 guys for a certain day and everything. And I may have used 15 of them, And so that took a while to get used to. They also went $800,000 over budget for.
Oh, wow.
For Epcot, it was going to cost $1 million or $1 billion or 800 million. That was it, and I think it went to $1 billion before it was over with.
That definitely commonly happened at Disney.
And they didn't have to go to the bank either, man. They just took it out of the drawer. They'd release Bambi and bang, they'd have another, couple million in the bank.
That's right. Yeah, by that time they had certainly a lot of cash flow.
Yeah. So that was a great experience. Just, I'm one of those fortunate people. I never had anything turned down. Everything I did was gold. So amazing.
It speaks to your talent for sure, because it's not common.
Speaks to something.
Someone liked you at the very least. It was
right.
But yeah, I mean, the fact that Disney, the fans, the people who went to the parks, the fact that we also love all this music, I think is a testament to your ability to kind of to make something so memorable and so beloved by so many people. So that's definitely speaks to your talents.
That's nice to know. It is nice to know. Every once in a while, I meet somebody that my wife was working for a fueling company, air fuel, and she had to go to a convention in Vegas. And so her boss parked his car in our garage, and I drove him over to the airport and picked him up when they came back. And on the way back, he says to me, I get in the car with him, and he said, "Hey, your wife tells me you write tunes for Disney." And I go, "Yeah." He says, "You have anything to do with, you've just been wishing about going fishing and on the shore," which is the opening song for the Bear Band Jamboree, their summer vacation thing, right? And I had written, I wrote the lyrics of the song and the whole thing. And he said, "Is there any chance I could get a copy of that?" And I said, "Sure, I'd send you a copy." And I got home with every intention of sending him a copy of that. And I found the Japanese version that I had done in Japan. So I sent him that one.
Well, that's a surprise.
He's the only person in the world that has the Japanese version of the opening of Bear Band Jamboree.
I have to say that is unique for sure. Yeah, Great Outdoors is a great song, though. Very memorable. I guess for anyone who is interested in pursuing a similar career, it's changed, the field has changed a bit, but whether that's looking to pursue writing music at Walt Disney Imagineering or with films or TV, anything in that genre, I guess what advice would you offer to folks looking to pursue that field?
I wish I have a good friend, Richard Bellis, who is the one of the gurus on developing music for film, for composers, the emerging composer. He wrote a book, it's become the Bible, for students. Never having been a student, I came up through, teaching myself.
Right.
I do not know how you do it now. I know that I know guys that have written movie cues, say, that fit certain, and they'll, with video now, they can take a video and take the sound off and do their own music to it and use that as a demo. And many of them have gone to Europe and used big orchestras to do that and create a reel of music and then try and get it around to all these different producers. And I must say, there's so much television production now. I'm realizing, just sitting around watching all these different series that are on TV, that are just amazing. They all use music, and a lot of it's orchestra. So somehow you got to latch on to a producer, director, and other than that, I don't know. Write a hit record, get it on the internet. I don't know.
That's definitely one way to do it.
I've written a lot of music since I've been, kind of retired. I've written probably 40 songs, but I just do it for my own amazement, and I've got my own studio and everything, so I'm able to, record. I just finished a thing actually for a guy who was a fan of Horizons, as a matter of fact, and he's got a show on the internet. He's Dr. Geek, and I can't remember the name of the show, but he actually commissioned me to write a theme.
Wow!
So I just finished that. I just finished it a couple of weeks ago. It took me a long time because I couldn't bring any singers into my studio.
That's true.
4 or 5 months. So
yeah.
Somebody asked. There's a Horizons group of guys on Facebook, I guess, and somebody mentioned that I had done the music, and all of a sudden I got all these beautiful, wonderful little thank yous, and I didn't realize, how many people knew this music. It surprises me.
I think ever since the proliferation of the internet, there's been this newfound knowledge. I don't think before then I would have known, but except for maybe reading some credits who wrote the music. But since the Disney fans took to the internet and started spreading and sharing knowledge, it has become more known of who did what.
Right.
So that's probably the reason why. I love that you're still composing, by the way. You should, I know you do it for sort of just the pleasure of writing music, but you should consider putting stuff up on YouTube if you don't already. I'm sure a lot of fans would love that.
I've been involved with Teddy Ruxpin for years. I wrote 150 songs for him.
Wow.
And he keeps coming back. He's one of those things that doesn't die. And up to this year, I had been busy. They reissued the toy a couple of years ago, a toy company. He's been with like about 5 different toy companies now. And they keep reissuing. And every time they reissue, I have to remix all the music and remix the shows and take out things and put new things in and everything. So that has kind of kept me in the studio working. But at the other end of it, I'll write, and I'm not writing film music. I'm writing songs and lyrics. And I guess I started as a singer. I guess I'm still a singer. Except when I try to sing. Terrible.
Either way,
hire singers now, huh?
Either way, I'm sure a lot of people would still enjoy listening to it.
Well, I'll send you some.
Oh yes, please do. I'll have to. I'll at least be checking it out. So before we officially wrap, are there any particular other stories you want to share? Or anything else that comes to mind from your years at Disney?
Not really, other than it was as I said, for a guy like me, it was a break of a lifetime. I didn't realize it when I took it. Because I was busy then. Myself, Richard Bellis, and I had formed a production group, and Bernie Brillstein was our manager, and we were really, really busy. We were doing movies of the week for ABC and producing acts for Vegas, So when I got this Disney call, it was really, like I told you, I said no because I was so busy doing, this other stuff that I didn't want to lose it, and I didn't know what Disney meant or anything. And then when I finally said yes and walked into that first date where I had a 52-piece orchestra that they couldn't record, just standing in front of that orchestra and, was wonderful just to hear back what you wrote with not just 52 musicians, but 52 of the best musicians in the world. So many times that you get in and you say, okay, guys, here we go. And you do it and it's perfect, right? The first time through you go, I got, geez, that only took 2 minutes and I got 3 hours here. And so then you say, God, that was really great, guys. Let's do it one more time, So that was, I've been in a lot of studios in my life, but that was certainly the highlight. A lot of people would like to have a break like that. And I've just met so many wonderful people, and, and being the age I am, that, I've worked with, I used to conduct for George Burns, and I knew all the old vaudeville guys. I worked with Sammy Davis before he was Sammy Davis.
Wow.
He was the Will Maston Trio featuring Sammy. And so I've really had a long career. And, I got in it before there was tape, they were doing kinescopes. When I did the Como show, we did that on kinescope. And I've had some funny experiences at Disney with, dealing with young people, that I got called in to do a show for Japan, and I walked in this room, and I swear the two guys sitting there couldn't have been more than 12 years old. I mean, I swear, man, they were the youngest guys I'd ever seen, and they were going to do this show that featured the genie and then two live people on stage, but they had this 3D genie on a big screen. And the genie was going to come out of the screen, with 3D glasses on and work with these two guys on the stage. And they were going to rent a huge studio and an incredible computer system to put this through. And I'm sitting there, and they have no idea who I am. I was brought in. I was freelancing then. Anyway, I said, I used to do TV. And we'd come in with a rehearsal pianist, and the choreographer would say, give me something like about 8 bars or something like that. And so the piano player would do that, and he'd move the people, and then, okay, I need something that goes, and the piano player would write that in on the sketch and everything. And then, I need 14 more bars. I got to get them from there to there. And the guy would, piano player and the choreographer would work it out. And, and we'd be out of there in an hour. And then somebody would come in and orchestrate it, and and then we'd be on the air Saturday. And these kids just looked at me like I was some kind of maniac. And then they took me off the project because I hadn't done the movie. They thought that I can't remember who did the movie, but they ended up hiring him. But that's the way they did. That's the way they ended up putting it together. Was how I had suggested. You there?
Amazing. Yeah, I'm still here. No, it's amazing.
Yeah, okay.
I was just enjoying listening to the story. But I was going to say I definitely on behalf of everyone who's listening, just thank you for all the work you had done over all the years, and for taking the time for this discussion. And I sincerely hope you continue writing as well, and hopefully we'll get to listen to it.
Okay. Well, it's my pleasure. I had a lot of fun
George.
talking to you.
Same here. Thanks so much, George.
Okay. Bye-bye.
And with that, we close out episode 86 of the Imagineer podcast. I want to give a very special thank you once again to George Wilkins for coming onto the show and talking about his experiences, all these amazing stories about what it was like to work at Walt Disney Imagineering. He worked on so many incredible projects, and I love the fact that he got to work with people like Marty Sklar, Kevin Rafferty, the Sherman Brothers, Buddy Baker, so many incredible former Walt Disney Imagineers and composers. Of course, I want to turn the conversation over to you and learn of all of George Wilkins' work, which I know is quite a lot. Which is your favorite? You can send me your answers and feedback in so many different ways, and be sure to follow us as well on these social media channels, including Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and LinkedIn at Imagineer Podcast, on Twitter at Imagineer News, and you can also join our Facebook group, The Imagination, also called the Imagineer Podcast Disney Fan Community, to chat not just with me, but with other members of the Imagineer Podcast community about this episode and so many other Disney topics. If you don't already subscribe to the show, be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or any other podcast app, which will ensure that you are the first to know when new podcast episodes become available. And if you have 5 seconds to leave us a rating in the Apple Podcast Store, and 30 or 60 seconds, however long it takes, to write us a review, also in Apple Podcasts or on Facebook. It does so much to help to continue to grow our community. I am so thankful that we have about 400 five-star reviews of Imagineer podcast so far, and huge thank you to all of you who have taken the time to write a review. I do read each and every single one of them, and often will share them to my Instagram and Facebook story. I so greatly appreciate it. Of course, if there's anything you would like to hear in terms of future episodes, be sure to reach out to me and let me know whatever feedback you might have, things you'd like to hear on future episodes of the show. You can reach out to me on social media or send me an email at imagineerpodcast@gmail.com. One of the best things you could do for the show is also to share it, whether you share out your favorite episode of Imagineer Podcast, if you share out a social media post on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or any other social media app, or just talk about it with your friends. Everything you do to share Imagineer Podcast does so very much for the show. And if you would like to take your love of Imagineer Podcast one step further, definitely look into Imagineer Society, which you can learn more about by going to patreon.com/Imagineer Podcast. Patreon is spelled Patreon, or you can simply go to imagineerpodcast.com and click on the shop drop down, and then you'll see Imagineer Society listed there. But in short, Imagineer Society is a way that you can help to support the show financially, and in return get perks, benefits, rewards, so many perks, including things like private access to a private Facebook group, my close friends list on Instagram, early access to every podcast episode, and access to my podcast production notes, bonus podcast episodes just for Imagineer Society members, monthly video calls, and I'm always throwing in bonuses and surprises here and there for Imagineer Society members. And again, you can learn all about it by going to patreon.com/Imagineer Podcast. Membership starts at literally just $1 a month. Of course, the more you can donate, though, the more it does support the show and the more rewards you get in return for your membership. And be sure to check out our partners. First, look into The Kingdom Insider over at thekingdominsider.com. or The Kingdom Insider on any social media channel, because Christy has so much incredible information to share. She has been still traveling to Disney during this time, and traveling quite often at that, sharing so many updates, what it's been like to go to Disney. Beyond that, she shares some incredible tips, and not only things like how to enjoy your vacation at Disney, including Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Disney Cruise Line, and other destinations, but also how to bring the magic of Disney into your own home. And what I love most about Christy, probably the best selling point, is when it comes to Disney news, she only shares confirmed information. None of these, spewing rumors or false information and making them factual. No, it is everything that is true and confirmed by Disney. If there is a rumor, she will definitely label it as a rumor very clearly, and it's one of the things I love about the Kingdom Insider, so definitely check her out. And I would also encourage you to look into our travel partner, Academy Travel. The next time you are ready to book your next vacation to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Disney Cruise Line, Adventures by Disney, Aulani, or any other Disney destination around the world, Academy Travel can help you to plan out your next vacation, which at this point is more complicated than it's ever been, but they can do so at no additional cost to you. And I work with them because they've been doing this for over 25 years and are Diamond Earmarked, which is the highest level of distinction that Disney awards to travel agencies, can offer an incredible level of service, help you to save money on your next Disney vacation, and again, do it at no additional cost to you. You can request a free quote, no obligation, by clicking on the links in the description of this podcast episode, or quite simply, go to imagineerpodcast.com, click on the travel drop down, and fill out one of those forms depending on your destination, and they will get back to you as soon as possible with a free quote. Again, no obligation for your next Disney vacation. Last but not least, I hope you are doing everything you possibly can to go after your hopes, your dreams, your goals, whatever they might be. 2020 isn't the easiest year, but that doesn't mean you need to be sitting on the sidelines. Take action today to still go after those goals and those dreams. Go and make them a reality. And remember, as always, that inspiring quote from Horizons: if you can dream it, you can do it. Thank you so much for listening to the show, and we'll see you again in a future episode of the Imagineer Podcast.
lots of good things under our oceans.
And don't forget space. We found lots of good things out there, too.
These space colonies are out of this world. Let's take a quick look around.